All right. Here's the endings for the middle passive. I don't know why he labels it this way, but I looked in the original copy of the book. He just calls this the middle of middle, but it's actually middle passive both. It's middle and passive. I thought about just typing and passive in there on this heading.
I am.
They got the same in. I think I will.
That's what I did.
All right. I'm just going to type it in there and leave it that way because that's what it is. They're the same. The only tenses that they're not the same is what we call the aorist tense, which we haven't covered yet, and the future tense, which we haven't covered it yet. But all the other cases, all the other tenses, I'm sorry, it's the middle and passive are the same. There's no difference. Okay. So I just edited the book right here now. Okay. Middle and passive. I got to looking down here and I said, well, surely he's got the passive down here somewhere, but maybe he has that in the next lesson, but I don't think he does. So now then, the imperfect goes with the perfect, goes with the present tense. That's probably why he's put them together. I think I told you that last week, because basically they have the same kind of action. It's durative or continuous or linear action that continues, goes on. And the only difference in them is that the imperfect is in the past tense and the present is in the present tense in the indicative mood. So you don't have an imperfect tense infinitive because it doesn't have time in it. And so it would do exactly the same thing the present tense infinitive does. That's why we don't have one. Also, you won't see the imperfect tense in any moods except the indicative mood, right? Because it covers the same ground in the other moods that the present tense would cover. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
The only time you're going to see it is just these two lessons, 14 and 15. And then it's found a number of times in the New Testament, but it's a significant number. It's not near as common as the present and the aorist tenses, but it's there. There enough that you kind of need to learn it. And so it does not function in the other, like imperative mood and so forth, commandments, subjunctive mood, and optative moods. It's not in those moods. All right. Now, he introduces something else. This has nothing to do with the imperfect tense. He just throws it in here. It's genitive with verbs. I think I talked about this last week. Did I speak about this or did I skip down?
I don't have it marked.
I don't remember hearing about it.
Okay. All right. Now, English verbs will take their object in the objective case in English. All right. That's the same thing as the accusative case in Greek. All right. Sometimes I have an English grammar book that calls the objective case. They also call it the accusative case. So it's actually called by some English grammarians the accusative case, the objective case, the object, the direct object. Think of it that way. All right. So some English verbs, and some of them are even transitive, take the objective case, may in Greek take the genitive case. So some verbs will take the genitive case object. And that's what you run into is these verbs are generally verbs of senses. I'm going to go ahead and change that. Senses, understanding, all right, partaking, all right, ruling, and lacking. These are your verbs. Verbs of that nature. They can be translated with think of, get hold of, and so forth. That's how they would be translated. And that would be good in English. And you have to just learn from the lexicon or from a vocabulary. Now I'm going to skip down here. We're going to look at a couple of these words and I'll show you in the vocabulary. Notice he says may take a genitive object. All right. Some verbs take a dative object. Is that clear? All right. The word worship would take a dative object. All right. And here speak against takes a dative object. So some of your verbs will take different objects other than the accusative. Okay. Now he doesn't speak of the dative objects here, but I'm going to introduce it. Okay. So what you'll do is you'll have to go into your lexicon, and a lot of times they will tell you what it is. Now I don't know whether I need to go to the end of it or not, but you can see that at least in our vocabulary here, you can see it take a genitive object here, right? Akuo. Now, akuo is interesting. It takes either, and that's I hear, and that can take a genitive or an accusative object, right? One of them is to hear without understanding, the other is to hear with understanding, right? And that we use it that way in English. So I hear you. I hear what you say, but I don't understand what you're saying. You're speaking a foreign language, for instance. All right. Those with Saul of Tarsus heard, but they didn't hear, depending on which count you read. And one of them has hearing with the accusative object, and the other one has with the genitive object. All right, so that's the explanation for it. It's not a contradiction. Any questions? All right. A krate to, notice, referencing him Matthew, atu. Right. She was seizing, and the she comes from the context, was seizing the garment of him. And so the object here is in the genitive case. She was seizing the garment of him. Right? She wasn't seizing him, she was seizing the garment. Right? So that's your object. Genitive case. This is the oo ending too. Now it's a genitive article. Right? The garment of him. All right. Hoi, necroi, aku usin, taste, and the new is movable now. Taste, phonase, to weu, to theu. Okay. The dead hear what? The object is the voice or the sound, the voice. That's genitive case. Whose voice? Of the Son of God. Notice the article with the word theos and theu here. The article never goes with, I've hunted through it and I can't find it anywhere. It may be there, but I missed it if it is. It never goes with a false God. It always goes with the true God. Okay. Singling him out as distinct from other gods, lowercase g gods. Any question? Okay. The dead hear the voice. They hear of the voice. They hear the voice. And so here that's the hearing. And that's hearing with understanding, you see. All right. And again, you can go to the passages in Acts 9, 22 and 26, and you'll get those three passages and put them together, and you can see it in two different cases. The word hearing can be in the accusative case, or it can be in the genitive case, right? Now, the dead here, John 5:25, we have to look in the context of what the dead, whether it's physically dead or spiritually dead, okay? We don't worry about that right now. Any questions? The reason I'm bypassing it, I haven't looked at the context. I don't want to spout off and it'll be wrong, okay? All right. At the second coming, everybody that's there is going to hear the voice of the Son of God, okay? I think that's what it is, coming. All right, the accusative extension of time. Duration of time is expressed by the accusative of time, a mene, and that is in perfect tense. Notice your augment, it's from meno, so this becomes a mene. Now I sent you a file, and I'm going to go into it in just a minute. Dodeca. Now that's two. We'll get those later. But deca is 10 in Greek, and do is 2. So that's 210, and that's like our 12. 212. 210 is 12. All right, 2 and 10. Horas, that's hours. So right here, abiding, he was dwelling, abiding is the best translation, 12 hours. Right? So that's accusative here, 12 hours. Okay? He was abiding 12 hours. Let's look at this, and we'll come back to the vocabulary in just a minute. All right. And this is, break it there. De et tri bone, the etribone, chronon. And our word chronology comes from that English word. Ook, and that's a movable word. Instead of becoming a nu with the Omicron, it becomes a kappa, ook. And that's just oo for not. Oligon, soon, toys, Marthatites. Okay. They were tarrying, and that is, they were tarrying, and that's your augment. And I don't know, and that may be one of our words here. No, it's not. Okay, sorry about that. They were tarrying the time no little, not a little, with the disciples. Okay. And so here's the time is in the accusative case. Not a little time. All right. I'm going to get rid of that right now. I'll just do it later. It wants to update something. I'm not wanting to update it right now. I'm going to get out of this and get into something, and I'll come back to it in just a minute. Okay. I think I got to stop sharing. Just a moment. Start sharing again. Information for students. And hopefully you'll be able to see it. Can you see it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This is a table that I've constructed, and it's I sent it to you before class. So you should have it in your email folder. It should be there. This is an overview of the indicative mood. This is our tenses, present, imperfect. We have future tense. We have these other tense forms. Okay, we'll come back to them later. But there's luo, and then there's the imperfect form. That's imperfect. And this here, of course, is imperfect tense, present, active voice. And then we have the middle voice forms down here. And then we have the imperfect passive, which will be the same as the middle. I just had continued down the table. And we have the infinitives. Notice there's no imperfect infinitives. Okay, the present there is perfect. Okay, so that's what we run into here. And you have this now. This is a table. You can refer to it. It will help you. And it gives us section numbers out of our book where these are found. Now, hopefully that'll help you a little bit. Okay. Any comments there? Anything you want to add to it or anything?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Now it's 27 pages, so I want to run through it just kind of quickly. And there's your that's all your forms for the infinitives. And so you have some of the, and here's some other future passive and so forth that we haven't covered yet. Okay. So again, it's all listed by section number in Robert's grammar. Okay. So be aware. I think I got this pretty well. I do have some work I need to do on it, but I'm getting pretty well about finished. Up to the first page on it. There's your contraction of diphthongs, the rules. All right. Here's your article, and that's how many times it's found, 19,867 times. That's all your articles. Okay. Remember, the vocative sometimes will take an article, but if it'll take the nominative article is what it'll take. It's rare. It's very rare that the vocative takes an article. There's notes on your definite article. And I got some of this. If you have Clark's commentary, which that's, I know he's a denominational fellow, but he's got some pretty good material in there. You have to filter even what the brethren write, fellas. I think you both know that. Right? So some of them are just not straight, but Clark has some good material. So your noun rules are laid out. The vocative case rules are laid out. I got some of this from other books. The nouns, first declension, singular, a gloss, a translation, the plural with the article, and translation. And again, the section numbers where they're found, okay? Right. And section 11 through 27 and 39 through 44 in Robert's grammar. There's stems, alpha stems preceded by epsilon, iota, rho. Anyhow, you can go right on through here and just follow this through, and these tables will be here for most of the book. So you can probably, if you wanted to, you print these suckers out and just put them in a notebook before you just flip over to it. And that way you wouldn't have to hunt around for this information. And it'll have, if you want to study it more, it'll, well, I don't have it here, okay. But it'll have them, at least when they're introduced, it'll have the page section numbers. You can find it in the book, okay?
Marion, you sent that to us in April. Have you changed it since then?
Yes.
Okay.
I have changed it. I've added to it.
Okay.
It's considerably, it's got quite a fair amount of it, okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to get out of that again. Get out of it. And I want to stop sharing. I'm going to go to share screen again. I'm going to get into another one, lexicon and grammar notes. And I've sent that to you also, but I want to go back into it. All right. Here's information on the imperfect tense. So I've got a heading on a section, and this is on page 358 in that material. But you can just do a Control H and search, Control H and search, and you can find imperfect tense, okay? Or just type imperfect. And it'll give you a lot of the rules from several different grammar books. And so these, just write them down, you get more and more information about it, okay? Any question? Right. I'm going to get out of it now. Stop sharing. Go back. We'll go back to our I'm sorry. I want to go back to Robert's grammar. All right, are we back where we started? Can you see it now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. All right. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I do. Back on that 110, where he talks about the genitive with verbs, and you change the thing there. These verbs are generally verbs of senses, understanding, partake. Is there a book where they do these verbs that way? In other words, they'll tell you some verbs take, like here, they're generally verbs of senses, ruling, and they give a list.
I think maybe your lexicon will do it.
Okay.
I think Thayer does it. What he'll do, and I'm going to look up a Kuo and Thayer, and I'll get it. I can't put Thayer on the screen, but I'm going to look a Kuo up and just kind of show you how that works. Okay. Hold on a minute. I'm having to look. Well, my new Thayer has such thin pages. So, okay. Okay. Kuo is on page 22 in Thayer, if you happen to have it. All right. I think it will tell you here that it has it. I'm pretty sure it has it here. It tells you what will go with the different cases. Okay. But the problem is I got about one full page on Thayer on this, and I'm not going to take the time and run through it right now with you. I will do this for next week. It's an assignment for me, okay? I'll try to have this laid out for you. But I know it does discuss it somewhere in here in Thayer, pretty sure. And I think the Thayer will tell you the various cases. You just got to read through and find it, okay? Right.
Okay. Thank you.
But our grammar book lists a lot of words that'll take other cases. Now let me do this. We're on page 64. I'm going to go to the end of the book, and we'll go back into our file back here. Go back in. This is our vocabulary file. I've edited a bit from what he had. A word or two, a few words. Okay. And let's see what he has, what we have here for a Kuo. Often with genitive. All right. And then it goes to the next column. Often with genitive. That's all he says, often with genitive. That means often, doesn't mean always.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if he doesn't right here, middle with the genitive, this word here. Middle with the genitive. So what he's saying is, normally it'll take an accusative object. Is that clear? So when he singles it out, he's telling you it can. And he says often, that means not always. So it can take both.
Okay.
All right. But normally they'll take an accusative object. All right, let me see. Latruo. The word worship takes a dative object. I don't know. Let me just think. I'm just trying to look and see if I can find one right here. Put out aside, consume. Again, worship. All right. Well, I'm trying to look. Now, look, I just can't find any. Okay, right quick. Here's one, Deluo. I am a slave, I serve, and it takes the dative case object. I give service to, say that would fit the dative. So it takes a dative object. That's what they're telling you in this vocabulary. So some of them will take dative objects. I want to get a me. I hope he tells us here. I'll tell you if he doesn't. He doesn't, okay. A me takes a nominative case object, takes a predicate nominative as its object. He doesn't say it here, but it does. When we get to it, I'll lay it out and give you information to that effect. Okay. I forgot what page I was on. Do you remember? All right.
Was on 110, 112. 110, 112, page 47.
Huh. Did I mess up? Okay. We were back on that prior lesson already. Middle passage is where we are. All right.
Not quite sure I catch 111.
Okay.
How is that different from the previous sections already in the lesson? I'm trying to understand the point it's making.
Well, the duration of time is expressed by the accusative with time. Accusative of time is what he's saying. So this is dodeca horas, 10 hours or 12 hours. And I was dwelling, he was abiding 12 hours. So we have a duration of time, 12 hours, and a little time, not a little time. So that's going to be in the accusative case, right? Not a little. Of course, normally most verbs will take their objects in the accusative. All right. So it's just how it's structured. In this case, it's got time involved in it, a certain amount of time.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. Akuo may take a genitive, but he's telling you there, normally they'll take the accusative, so it takes both. And anti-lego, I speak against, I give speech against or directed at. So that's taking the dative object. It takes a dative object. It doesn't take an accusative object. So if it doesn't take an accusative object, it's not a transitive verb. Okay? So it's not transitive. All right? And diabolos, that's of course a noun. False accuser. Yeah, Pharaoh, and of course diabolos is compound word. Dia and bolos, something thrown or thrust. So it's just thrust through. When you thrust somebody through with words, usually is what it is here. Speech, slander. It's also slanderer. It's the same word translated as slanderer. Okay. Dia Pharaoh, it's two words. Pharaoh is our bear. My memory hook for that is no Pharaoh made the children of Israel bear burdens. That's just how I remember it. I did that years ago when I first started studying this. And so the Pharaoh, I spread through abroad. I bear this burden through abroad. Epithumeo, and epi is upon. That's a preposition. We haven't had prepositions yet, have we? Or have we?
Lesson 4.
Yeah, lesson 4.
Okay. All right. Epithumeo, and this is your thymus gland, your heater. Okay. Or desire to do something. Okay. All right. and that's I am eager for, I desire. Euangelion, and the you prefix is good. Euphemism, okay, and so forth. Just trying to think of some English words right quick. Eulogy, that's good, saying good words about somebody. Angelion is to bear a message. And so this is Evangelion, is the gospel of the good news, the good tidings, right? It's sometimes translated good news or gospel, sometimes translated the good news or good tidings, bad tidings, translated both ways. Thronos, you can hear the word throne in that. And that's, of course, a noun. Both of these are. And of course, there's your article. You can tell what kind of noun it is. That's a neuter article right there. So it's a neuter noun. Kata bino, word. Kata is down, and bino is I go. So when they compound it, that's I go down. It's a verb, of course. I go down, and the object would be an accusative case. Mathatuo, and that's I teach or I make a disciple. And I'm going to give you another word here. I'm going to write it here. Let me do this, and I'll get rid of it in a minute. All right. Montano, I think the accent is on the alpha, but it doesn't matter. That word there is also disciple. It's a verb, but this is the one doing the discipling. This is the one being discipled. Does that make a difference? You see the difference? So you have to look at them in the context. That will give you a lot of information about it. That's in that file that I sent you, the file of grammar notes and lexicon file. And that file I update it just on a regular basis. So I may just send it to you from time to time, and it'll always be added to. Okay. Any question? This is the one teaching, and the Montano that I erased is the one being taught. Okay. Para, and that's para. And tithemi, and this is to place beside, by the side of. Tithemi is to set, S-E-T, or place. And so if I set something beside them, I'm commanding them. That kind of makes sense, right? Peirazo, attempt, or try, or test, right? And so some people try to tempt or try or test God, but God can't really be tempted with evil, but you can try him. You can attempt to. Does that make sense? See the difference? Any question there? Pistuo is I believe, right? Prosopone, and that's the front of you, your face. Te is to or and that's different than chi, and you have to get into and study them more fully. And we have a word, it's an indefinable word, and so it's tesaraconta, and so that's 40. It's indeclinable, so no matter what case it is, it will have just the same form. Now, how would you know what case it is? Well, they probably would put an article with it, and that article would tell you what case it's supposed to be. Does that make sense? Any question? Cairo, I rejoice. And Korah region. Notice the rough reading. Emotion, garment. And we have different subtle words. A raiment, I think, is more of a fine garment. And this is just a regular garment. All right. So I think that's the difference, is how the King James American Standard translate them. Okay. Are there questions? All right. Now, there was one thing I was going to do. Oh, my. I thought of it right in here while I was. We haven't done the translation yet, so I'm going to go back over. I wanted to show you, and I'm going to go back over to the lexicon. Let me get this out, and I'll quit it. Okay, can you see it?
Yes, sir.
I want to come down here toward the end. I think I've got it done. This will be something that you might be able to use. These are your pronouns right at the end. I want to make sure these pronouns are also in the lexicon. Prepositions. We have prepositions. We've studied 7 or 8, maybe 10 of them in that lesson. And here are the number of times they're found in the New Testament. The ones that are not found very many times, we may have not studied them in that lesson where we had that big circle. Remember lesson 4 or 5 or somewhere thereabouts. But right here, here's the preposition. Have I already shown you this? Yes or no?
No, sir, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so.
This is the, and this is in your file. Here's your preposition. Here's the abbreviation for it. Now, in the text of the Bible, it may be abbreviated. So there's an abbreviation for it. You can run into those. The object is the accusative. This one takes the accusative. And the meaning, this is a gloss of one simple word, 1 or 2 words, is up. It is found 13 times in the New Testament. Anti, and it's abbreviated ant, depending on what follows it. And this tells you the rule. If this preposition ends in a vowel, it is abbreviated. If the next word either begins with a vowel or a diphthong, see? Right, is that clear? If it ends in a vowel, right, it'll be abbreviated, and that's the rule. And so, ant, and it goes with the ablative case, and it's face to face or instead of. It's found 22 times. Apo, and it's op or off, depending on what follows it. It's ablative and it's from. It's found 646 times. That's a bunch. The R is found 667 times. It goes with genitive or accusative. However, some grammarians say it goes with the ablative instead of genitive. So there's some disagreement there among them on that. Ace, and I want to send you a treatise that I wrote on this from Acts 2:38, because that's something that's challenged by the denomination, particularly the Baptist. 1,768 times. It's an important word. So you can see the frequency of it, its meaning, its object. Ein goes with the instrumental and the locative cases. Now, your lexicons will not list the ablative, they'll call it genitive, and instrumental locative, they just call it dative, because they're 5 case advocates, but they'll subdivide it if you read into their text. All right, does that help? These are your proper adjectives, prepositions, I mean, which what that means is that they can stand alone or they can be compounded with a word, with a verb usually, right? So they can stand alone or be compounded, but they are both. Any question?
So those charts and everything is in the newest update
Yes.
of your
You,
notes?
you received this tonight already.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yeah.
One thing,
Yes, go ahead, Benjamin.
one thing I didn't understand was the case where it's, for instance, HAPA would be op versus off.
That's just the abbreviation. If the next word begins with a diphthong or a vowel, it's the same word.
The
It's
diphthong is the second one.
well, there's some rules for what letters can go together and what they do. And you have to go back to those rules in the very beginning of the class. That will tell you which way it goes. That's in the introduction before we even got to lesson 1. And I glossed over that a little bit, okay? But that's where they come in, and you can tell which one of these would apply. I'm sorry, not helping you,
Okay.
Shima.
No worries. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So if you're reading and translating in the Bible, these will give you your abbreviations for them. Okay. Now, these are proper. They can be standalone or they can be compounded with another word of a verb. The verb, I think. And an improper preposition is a preposition that can only stand alone and is not joined with a verb to form a new word. It's not compounded. There are 42 of them. Right? Hama stands alone. It can't be compounded. It goes to instrumental case together with, and it's found 10 times. One time in the New Testament, one time it's a preposition, the other times it is an adverb. So, because prepositions are kind of subdivisions of adverbs. In the one case where it's a preposition, I've laid out for you. On new is ablative, it's always a preposition. And right here, acri, and it can be acris depending upon if it has a vowel. The next word begins with a vowel or a diphthong, it'll add a sigma to it, but it's the same word. And that, when I started first studying Greek, I just thought they were different words. And I wasn't going by my rules, and I finally got studying and I realized they're the same word, it's just the rule. So that parentheses tells you it's added. Right here, it's 49 times 44 of them are prepositions, the other 5 are adverbs. Anyhow, you can come through and see them and see all the rules. Now you have to go down. This table continues, okay? All right. And they're all in alphabetical order. There it ends down there, okay? Any question about that? All right. Now I left this right here for abbreviation. I'm having to study through to see if I can find where any of these words are abbreviated. And if they are, I'll put it in here. So this table may have additions, and it's just a job for me to do, okay? To see if there's any that are abbreviated. I haven't found any yet of these standalone ones, improper prepositions that are abbreviated, right? There may be, but they'll have to end with a vowel if they are. So those end in vowels there, and this one right here does, but it can have a new on the end of it. And that's not, and what happens with this one is it adds a sigma to it, okay? So it can be either way. Anyhow, that's what I wanted you to see. That might help you some, okay? Any question? So you got the abbreviations. If you're trying to translate through, you'll see them, okay? Right? Yeah. We're probably pretty close to the end of the class. I know I've gotten off a bit, but I thought it might be helpful. All right. Any questions for either one of you?
No, thanks. You
No,
just
thank you for all the good work.
Okay. I'm going to stop recording now.